Hello, everybody. Welcome at GLUETV. My name is Jeroen Junte. I'm a journalist, so I'll be conducting the interview. And as you all can hear, the interview this time is in English because next to me is Alan Nguyen. Welcome, Alan.
Thanks for having me.
You are this year a sticky member to
Yes.
GLUE, and that means you're the first-time participant. What does the sticky stand for?
I was actually clueless the first time, but now I think it's
Clueless or glueless?
glueless, not clueless.
Glueless? You first-time participant?
Yeah, first time participant. I wasn't sure what it was, but now I understand it's really a community. It's about meeting new people and sort of sticking onto each other. Hopefully, you find somebody that you can glue yourself onto.
Yeah.
That's at least my interpretation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you glue yourself onto in this edition?
Well, this year I'll be showcasing some of the work at the Rademakers Gallery.
Rademakers Gallery.
Yep.
Okay, that's immediately quite a good spot.
Yeah.
It's a
I'm
prominent
really,
gallery in Amsterdam.
I feel quite proud to be able to show my work there, yes.
And let me guess, I think your work is 3D printed.
Yeah, a little bit of this and that.
A little bit of this and that. You're like a sitting, talking showroom of your work, I can see. So 3D printing, for how long have you been 3D printing?
Wow. Ever since university, which was, let's say, 13, 14 years ago. But seriously, 3D printing when I first landed in Amsterdam in 2011 for a 3D printing company called Freedom of Creation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You came here to Amsterdam specifically for the 3D printing industry, or did you want to go to Amsterdam because, like many Americans, you heard such great stories about Amsterdam?
Honestly, none of the above. It was it was more serendipity, let's put it that way.
Okay.
I was actually studying architecture and just graduated and then starting industrial design. And part of the curriculum was to find an internship. So out of desperation, I somehow landed in Amsterdam and became an internship and then a full-time job. And then I had to say goodbye to my university and saying, I'm going to stay here.
Okay.
And then 2 years later, or a year later, I met my partner, who's also a designer, really talented. And so I had an excuse to stay.
So now you're glued to Amsterdam.
Now I'm glued
so
to
say.
Amsterdam.
Yeah. About your work, I see jewelry. I see there's also the watch. I think the band of the watch is 3D printed. You have
Yes.
a brooch. Also, this is more like a decorational object. I'd say an autonomous object,
Yep.
almost. Is that sort of the range that you make, somewhere between jewelry design and autonomous art, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. I think there was at the beginning always to try to kind of pinpoint what it is that you are. And recently, over the years, I've been surrounded by so many creatives that that you get this opportunity to see that you're actually not just one thing, but you're this and this and this. And I've kind of embraced it. And I think when you think as a 3D print designer, there's a lot of freedom. So why limit yourself when you can explore new things that haven't been done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it, and still is what attracts you to 3D printing? It had a big promise, like
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago, but this was the next big thing. All the consumers would be producers, we would all be prosumers, a new industrial revolution.
Yeah. I think anything that's worth exploring always takes time. I think yes, it's a bit slower, but there's been a lot of breakthroughs, I think, especially material science, applications. We're looking at big companies starting to adapt and understanding that they can create something that's really fine-tuned to the specific goals. But of course, in terms of mass adoption, I think it's still kind of a weird concept to think, oh, I can grab something from the sky and fix something that's broken at the house. Not too many people are that tech savvy yet, and I think once we bridge that gap of user interaction, then it'll be massively adopted. Yeah.
You think you still believe that it's going to be much bigger than it is now?
I think so. Yes, for sure. I think in general design is kind of catered around laziness and anything that can be.
Please explain that. I think you have to explain that a little bit.
Yeah, I think anything that can help us to become more enjoyable or to make things easier, we tend to adopt it. And so I think 3D printing is still at the beginning, but just imagine a scenario where you don't have a hardware store around you, but you do have a 3D printer and access to the internet, then you can kind of, now you're limitless in terms of solving your problems.
In terms of laziness, even better if your neighbor has a 3D printer,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And he knows a little bit how to handle it, how to work with it.
True. Yeah, I'm still questioning whether or not my mom would be somebody that would end up doing this, but there's also 3D printing food. And
food
other
and
things.
lots of other materials as well.
Yep.
For you personally, what is it that that makes 3D printing such an interesting way of producing, way of creating, way of designing? Because that's I think very interesting about 3D printing. It's not just a production technique; it's much more than that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. There's obviously the speed. So the reason why I kind of veered away from architecture, well, not just because my father was an architect, but was this sort of long-term design. Whereas 3D printing, you can iterate instantly every single day. So the time gap just really shrunk.
Yeah.
And that means that you can learn from the designs quicker. The rules are totally different. I think I was really bored in engineering as well because the rules were set. And even in architecture, I felt like the rules were set. And with 3D printing, almost everything is possible in terms of the mechanics. You can combine artwork, you can combine the and design all in one. So before, I think everything was quite specific, but what we're seeing is like a whole, how do I put this, fluidity between different components. So sort of like biodesign, right?
Yeah.
I think
there's a whole new aesthetics to it as well. If you look, for example, on this object here at the table, in some sort of way, you can immediately tell it's 3D printed, but at the same time, it's autonomous enough that it makes you wonder, like, what is it? How is it made? There's something, intriguing to it as well.
I think the funny thing was 10 years ago, if you look really closely, these layer lines were seen as like something that was ghastly and horrible. And so we tried our best to kind of mimic other production methods. And over the years, now it's becoming something that I enjoy. It looks like wood grain. It really, I want to emphasize that it's 3D printed instead of trying to hide it.
Exactly. It's like these furniture that you have now from iron, and you can very well see that it's welded, for example. You see sort of the making technique in the product.
Exactly. I think being really honest and genuine is really important in not just the design itself, but also production.
Yeah. Maybe also to make it a little bit less techy with TECHY, I mean, with the E. That it doesn't look as high tech as it's more crafty, actually, almost.
Sure, yeah. I'm happy that you say that. Yeah, exactly. I used to get really annoyed when people were 3D printing just cubes.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I think there's so many things to be, so many interesting things to make.
So for a lot of people, 3D printing is about perfection, about speed. And for you, it's much more about creativity and possibilities, and maybe even crafty expression of it.
It's I never get bored at watching a 3D print. It's like watching grass grow, but really exciting.
Paint dry.
Yeah, even after 10 years, who knows? I probably lost half of my life just staring at a printer, printing.
Yeah. The last 10 years, you mentioned it. You've been living in Amsterdam for the last 10 years. What is it about the creative climate in Amsterdam that, because of course it was the love, you said so yourself, but I think the creative climate must have had a part in you gluing to Amsterdam as well. What is for you the characteristics of this creative climate in Amsterdam?
I think there's a lot of openness, to be honest. Well, actually, when I first came, I felt really on the outside for many, many years. I thought there was a big gap between, somebody from somewhere else, also doesn't speak the language after all these years too, But I realized that was really within my own mind. And the second I stepped out and actually just introduce myself and show my work, and you start to attract people kind of within the same wavelength. And the second you step into that, the whole world opens up. And I think Amsterdam is a really great place where for creatives can really explore what it is that they want to do. I think in general, the city does a good job of making the basics met. There's not a lot of frustration, stress of just the basics like I'm used to either in Texas or in London.
Well, American cities in general, I think the pressure there is much higher. So it's kind of, for you, Amsterdam is kind of a laid-back, open atmosphere in which it's easy and good to create.
I think some people might disagree with me, but I think Amsterdam is quite a utopia. A modern day utopia, yeah.
Okay, so we should count our blessings as creatives in Amsterdam a little bit more then.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alan, one more time before we're going to leave the viewers at home.
Yep.
Where's your work on show, and describe maybe one or two specific objects that will be on show.
Yep, my work will be showcased at the Rademakers Gallery. The work is going to be sort of a mix of dinosaurs, concept around space and time, essentially everything that my inner child wants to come out. So I think it's important to not forget about that as you get older. And so the work is a bit of a celebration of that. Yep.
I think that's a very, very nice closing remark. We should cherish the inner child and the creative climate in Amsterdam.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Alan, and everybody at home or on your, maybe you're watching on your mobile phone. You could be anywhere. But thanks for watching, and hope to see you at Glue.